it's Sarah, and this is my podcast. Welcome to my channel. If you wonder where was I have to say that it's been a long time since I was away from YouTube. I think almost 2 months? Yeah, fair enough. And the reason was school, of course, final exams, which I was very busy with it, and it was so tough for me. It was the hardest time in my life, seriously. But in total, past 2 months was very tough, full of stress for me, and I know you can feel it that when you have exams, you're so stressed and all the feelings about it. I know you can feel it. But now it's summer. Yeah, it's summer. That means I'm free to record podcasts as much as I want to. I'm free to do that. I have no more studying, no more school. Schools are closed. I'm relaxed. Here we go. That's the best time for YouTube, seriously. Anyway, let's back to our podcast. Well. In this episode, I bring you an interesting story. Are you ready for a nice story? You're gonna hear many books in future podcasts. I named it Time to Figure Out because the books I want to tell you are too interesting and exciting with unexpected endings, which is really cool, seriously. And I recommend you to listen to this series of podcasts before bed. Now, you're gonna hear the last Sherlock Holmes story. Hope you have fun! Many people enjoy Arthur Conan Doyle's stories about the famous detective Sherlock Holmes and his friend Dr. Watson. But who now remembers that Holmes and Watson were real people? Everyone has forgotten that they lived before Conan Doyle gave them life in his book. Dr. Watson died in 1926. He was 73. He left behind him a locked box and orders that it must not be opened for 50 years. For 50 years, the box lay hidden in a dark room below a bank. Years came and went, and the world changed in 1,000 ways. In 1976, the box was opened. It contained a packet of papers. They tell a terrible story. Some people say it cannot be true. They said Watson was lying or that he was sick when he wrote it. After so many years, we cannot be sure. We have checked all the facts that we can. All we know is that the story could be true. It is possible. We think it is probable. Now, you must read it and decide for yourself. Enjoy the book. Introduction. How will my friend Arthur Conan Doyle would tell the story? How exciting and interesting he would make it. I cannot do that. I am no writer. I have been a doctor and a soldier. All I can do is make my report. But who will read my words? What will the world be like in 1976? Perhaps by then nobody will know the names of Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. Perhaps all Conan Doyle's wonderful stories will be forgotten. There is so much to explain. I must ask my reader to be patient. I had known and worked with Sherlock Holmes for almost 4 years when I first met Arthur Conan Doyle. ACD, I always call him. Like me, he was a doctor, and we quickly became good friends. He told me amazing stories of hospital life, and I told him about my life as an army doctor in Afghanistan. I often talked to him about Sherlock Holmes. At that time, most people had never heard of him. Only the police and some criminals knew what a great detective he was. ACD seemed to enjoy my stories very much. He was never too tired to hear about another of Holmes' cases. We met many times and enjoyed many good dinners together before I realized that ACD had a special interest in Holmes. He wanted to be a writer and had already enjoyed a little success. Now, he wanted to write about Holmes, using the facts of a real case, but adding his own ideas to the story. I found this an excellent idea. I was happy to think that my dear friend would become famous. I explained the plan to Holmes. He listened in silence, his pipe in his hand. Then he said, "Can you write, this friend of yours? Can he tell a true story? Does he understand the difference between facts and lies?" "I think so," I said. "He just began to write, but already he's becoming fashionable." "Fashionable," Holmes said coldly. "How can it interest me that he's fashionable? Can a fashionable writer have a serious interest in the facts of one of my cases?" I could not reply. Holmes sat silently, looking into the fire. At last he said, "Well, he may try. Let him do what he can. You may send him your notes on the Hope case, Watson." I wrote to ACD the next day, and he began work on the story. He called it A Study in Scarlet. When it appeared in the shops, I hurried out to buy it, and then sat for hours in the park reading it. The story was excellent, fast-moving, exciting and clever. I ran back to Baker Street. I could not wait to give the book to Holmes. He looked up quickly as I entered the room. "You're late, Watson," he said. "Were you ashamed to come here with that book in your hand?" "Ashamed, Holmes?" I cried. "No! ACD has done well. I see you have read it. Why don't you like it?" I was so sorry that I had spoken. "Like it? It is rubbish, wild and fantastic rubbish. He has been careless with the facts, added all kind of unnecessary lies, and made the most stupid mistakes." "But Holmes, I wonder what kind of doctor he is. I'm sorry for his patients. I would not be surprised to hear that he had cut off a man's leg because the man had a stomachache. He is clearly not interested in facts." "Holmes," I said as calmly as I could, "a writer does not just report facts. He must make sure that the story is interesting to read. I'm sure you understand that." Holmes smiled at me sweetly. "My dear fellow," he said, "I forget you know all about fine writing. How stupid of me to worry about a few careless mistakes. But your friend Mr. Doyle has shown that he does not understand how important my work is. He thinks that the criminals I fight against are stupid, miserable little beings. They are not. I fight against evil itself. He has failed to understand that. The book is worthless. Away with it, and with your friend, the writer." I wondered what to say to ACD, but there was no need to worry. A Study in Scarlet was not a success, and he began to write about other things. Several years later, he decided to write about Holmes again, but at that time, I had other things to think about. I had fallen in love with Miss Mary Murston. When she agreed to become my wife, I hurried to tell Holmes. I was full of happiness. I can still hear the cold surprise in his voice as he said, "I cannot pretend to be happy about this." This hurt me terribly, but I tried to laugh. Well, Holmes, I said, I hope you won't be too lonely when I go home to my wife. A shadow passed over his face. Oh no, Watson, he said. I still have my cocaine bottle. Was he asking me for help? Was it still possible, then, to save him? Perhaps. In my heart, I know only that my dear friend needed me, and that I failed him. The first murders. Sherlock Holmes became a detective in 1877, 4 years before I met him. At first, he enjoyed every case, but soon he began to find the work easy. 10 years later, he was famous, but he was unhappy and bored. The modern criminal is so painfully slow and stupid. He often said, I need an interesting case, Watson, one which will make me think. Are there no clever thieves or murderers in the world these days? It is dangerous for a very intelligent man like Holmes to become bored. Some days he grew violent, and once he shot several bullets into the walls of his room. He also began to use cocaine. Does my reader know about cocaine? I wonder. Perhaps it is no longer used in the world of 1976. It is a useful medicine, and doctors rightly give it to patients who are in the pain. But Holmes had no disease of the body. He used cocaine as a drug because he enjoyed it. It made the long days seem more exciting. Soon, he needed it every day and could not live without it. I told him to stop, but he only laughed at me. My dear Flo, I wish I could. Only bring me an interesting case, a difficult problem, and I shall forget my cocaine. One day in 1888, a note arrived from Scotland Yard. When Holmes opened it, he laughed and jumped to his feet. Inspector Lestrade wishes to see me, he said. The police need my help, Watson. You know, of course, that someone is murdering a woman in Whitechapel. Of course, I replied. The newspapers are full of it. 3 women are dead, and the police seem unable to find the killer. Everybody knows this. Life is cheap on the streets of Whitechapel for women like that. What can interest you in their miserable deaths? It is an extraordinary case, Watson, Holmes cried. I have been studying it. I knew the police would need my help. Shall I tell you the facts? Please do, I said. What is going to be one of Sherlock Holmes' great cases? I hoped that at last he had found something to interest him. The women who died were poor, and neither young nor beautiful, he told me. So they were not killed for money or for love. Why were they killed? That is one mystery. There is another. Each woman was killed with a knife. The word killed, Watson, cannot describe the violent and terrible ways in which they were murdered. They were cut up like meat. The stomach of one was open. The head of another almost cut from her body. But this is not the worst. There are things that even newspapers will not describe. He showed me a doctor's report on one of the bodies. As I read it, a sick feeling came over me. What man could do this? I asked. What possible reason could he have to do this to a woman? Why, Holmes? Why? He smiled coolly at me. Why, indeed? That is the real interest of this case. In themselves, these deaths are not important. Women like that are made dead every week. But why does this killer cut them up? Why rip the bodies to pieces with a knife? That is the question which makes this case so exciting. If anyone can stop these terrible murders, Holmes is that man, I thought. This case could become his greatest success. At that moment, somebody knocked at the door. "Ah, come in, Inspector," Holmes said. "I understand you have finally decided to ask me to help you catch this Whitechapel murderer." Inspector Lestrade did not look very pleased. "Not at all, Mr. Holmes," he said. "I was just passing Baker Street, and I know you find this case interesting." "How kind," Holmes said. "Please tell us. When did you arrest the killer?" "I'm a little sad, I must say, to find that you have done it all without me." "We haven't arrested anyone yet," Lestrade said. "But I'm very hopeful, Mr. Holmes. You see, I have in my pocket a letter from the killer himself." The smile left Holmes' face. He was suddenly serious. "May I see the letter?" he asked. It was written in red, and the name at the bottom was Jack the Ripper. I still remember something of what it said. "I love my work. My knife is nice and ready for the next job. I can't wait to rip again." Holmes turned to Lestrade. "What are you doing to stop this murderer?" he asked. "It is clear that he will kill again very soon." "Every extra policeman that we have will be in Whitechapel at night," Lestrade said, "and we have a little surprise for Jack the Ripper." He looked at us importantly. "Some of our best and bravest policemen will be dressed in women's clothes," he said. "We will stop at nothing to catch this criminal." There was a moment's silence. Then Holmes and I looked at one another, and we both began to laugh. We could not stop. Lestrade returned very red. "I see you are amused by murder," he said. "You do not wish to work with us. Well, I'm a busy man. I must leave you. Goodbye, Mr. Holmes. Goodbye, Doctor." Holmes stopped laughing immediately. "Inspector," he said, "I want very much to work with you. Let us meet this afternoon to discuss our plans." This made Lestrade much happier. When he had left, I said to Holmes, "You have laughed at police, but what ideas do you have about these crimes? Who do you think the murderer is?" "I do not know who he is, Watson," he told me, "but I believe I know what kind of man he is. He is far too intelligent, too extraordinary, a killer for our good friend Lestrade and his policemen in dresses to catch. No, he shall be mine. He is the criminal that I have waited for. To destroy him will be the greatest success of my life. I dream of it, Watson. I must destroy him. I cannot fail." He was shaking with excitement. I had never seen him like this before. The afternoon, he went to Scotland Yard. When he came home, he was very quiet. Next day, he appeared dressed in old daddy clothes. "I'm going to Whitechapel," he told me. "As you know, I have rooms in several parts of London. For the next 3 days, I shall live among the poor people of Whitechapel. Nobody will know who I am. I shall talk to them and listen to everything that they tell me." "May I come with you?" I asked, but he said, "No, Watson, you may not. If there is a murder, I shall send for you. I shall need your help." "Oh, Flew, have no fear of that." I spent a lonely evening in Baker Street. I was asleep when at 2:30 in the morning. A cab arrived to take me to Whitechapel. Another woman had met a violent death. As I traveled through the dark, empty streets, London seemed a strange and ghostly place. It lay there like a body of a great animal, not sleeping, but dead. The driver took me east, towards the poorest parts of the city. He stopped in the narrow lane of Leadenhall Street. I saw a group of policemen standing under a light. I went up to them. Holmes was not there, but I was introduced to the police doctor. He offered to show me the body. "I know you are a doctor," he said, "but I must warn you. You have never seen anything like this before." He led me to a dark corner with something like cover on the ground. He held up a light for me to see and pulled back the cover. No words can describe the awfulness of what I saw then. For a moment, my head felt light. I began to shake and was afraid I fell down. The thing on the ground had been a woman, but it was not a woman now. It was no more than blood and meat, cut open and ripped up with a terrible, unnatural violence. I knew now why the killer called himself Jack the Ripper. The doctor covered the body, and I walked back to the group of policemen. "Have you seen Mr. Holmes?" I asked one of them. "Oh, yes, sir," he said. "He was here with Inspector Lestrade. They came straight from the other murder." "The other murder?" I cried. "Has there been more than one murder tonight?" "Why, yes, sir. Did you not know?" At that moment, I heard the sounds of a horse coming into the lane, and a cab appeared. "Get in, Watson!" a voice shouted, and Holmes helped me into the cab. "He has escaped," he told me. "We followed him, but we have lost him." His face was sad and tired. "I want to show you something interesting. Then we can go home." The cab took us to a dark and dirty yard. "The first woman died here," Holmes said. A policeman was standing in the yard. Holmes took a light from him and shone it on the wall. "Look at this, Watson," he said. These words were written on the wall. "No time to rip." "It is a murderer's handwriting," Holmes said. "The same as in the letter that Lestrade showed us." "What is happening?" I cried. "I cannot understand what his killer wants." "He wants everybody to be afraid of him," Holmes told me. "He wants to be the most evil killer in the world. He had to kill 2 women tonight, because he did not have time to cut and rip the body of the first. I think he had somebody coming, and he had to leave the body and run. Then he killed a second time, and cut that woman's body to pieces in the way we have seen." We were both silent as the cab took us back to Baker Street, far from the narrow, dirty streets of East London. I could not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the body of a woman lying in a dark corner, covered in blood. Alright, that was it. It was the first part of the last Sherlock Holmes story, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we have almost, I think, 4 or 5 parts of it, and I'll put the second part of it as soon as I can. And yeah, that was it, and I hope you enjoyed it. To the next podcast. Bye bye!